A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional.
Hello and welcome back to Oversharing. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Dr. Naomi Bernstein.
How's it going? It was so nice to see you last week. You came and stayed. I had missed you guys. You got to meet the girls. How was it from your eyes? How was the rest of your trip?
So many things. I had so many thoughts that I wanted to share with you. We skipped a recording last week, so I was compiling all of my thoughts. My first of which is this experience that I've had many times as an aunt that I had with your kids, that I've had with most of my nieces and nephews. I live far from most of them. So there's this anticipatory, like, I cannot wait to meet you. I want to succush you. I want to squeeze you. I'm so excited. And most of the time, by the time I meet them, they're not just these newborn little puddles of mush, and they actually have their own feelings about being held by a relative stranger. And so it's an interesting experience. And I'm sure many of our listeners can relate, where you are so excited to get your hands on this baby, and they're like not about it. So Lucy was kind of screaming, and like I would hold them and they weren't really feeling it. And you have to just kind of enjoy them a little bit from a distance for a while until they can,
well, they get to know you. Yeah.
Get to know you and get comfortable. And I've had this experience with most of my nieces and nephews when they're babies. It's like, you can't just jump right in.
Unless they're like literally like 2 weeks old or something.
When they're 2 weeks old, they're passed around like a sack of potatoes. They don't really know the difference.
Yeah, no, it's weird because they are at the age where they have like preferences, and they have people they recognize and they have people they don't. And I feel bad. It's funny. Like, I also have my own feeling of like when people meet them and I kind of like want them to perform a certain way or to be a certain way, even though they're like babies. So, I wanted it to go in a different, I mean, they came around, but like it was an interesting, I think, thing to see whenever they meet anyone new.
Yes. Yeah. And I know and it is nice that we stayed with you. That's what I also like is that, and I noticed this too with babies around that age. If we would have just met up for dinner and went home, it wouldn't have worked. Like, they kind of just need your presence there for like a couple of days. And then by day 2, I was able to hold them and able to like get them to laugh and like, have more physical contact. At first it's like, okay, she wants to be in the stroller and she will laugh and they will be great as long as like they're in their little happy place in their stroller or like in their little spot. And that was great. But it is interesting where it's like, it's not about me. And just because I want to hold them doesn't mean that that's how it's going to go. So I had to be patient and work my way in. So that was interesting. Which I'm noticing is the dynamic in a certain window with certain babies.
It's funny, like you think about a lot of the things you give up for having kids or the negative sides of it or like the things that aren't ideal. And you never when I think of all like the positive things that I was excited for, they were a little bit, even for myself as their mother, like I'm like, and we're going to go on a walk every day and we're going to go like, I'm going to take them in the pool. And like, then the reality is like, okay, they're like, they're like 10 minutes into the walk and then one of them is like screaming because she is like over it. Or, I'm taking them in the pool and one of them just like doesn't like the water. It's kind of like you have your own, like, it's because and it's more about you. It's more about me or you, you know what I mean? Like, this is how I wanted it to be. Like, this is my like dreamy, like mental montage of how being a mom was going to be, like picnics outside and we're going to go swimming and we're going to go on these walks. And it's like, they're on the trajectory.
Like, I know I envision it a certain way where I'm like, I'm going to show up to the house. I'm going to scoop them right up and I'm going to be like, we're going to have our bonding and it's just going to start the second I walk in the door. But, so I'm beginning to curtail my expectations when it comes to babies of a certain age, which is fine. I think it's just universal. That's how it goes. And it just takes a little bit of time, but they are so cute and just delicious. And it It was really awesome. It was just so nice to get to spend time. So overall, the trip was great. But the other takeaway, which was just an interesting, whenever I go on vacation, I come back with huge reflections because one, I'm not working. I have all this time to kind of reflect and think. And I came back and usually, we spoke afterwards and I was like, I had this epiphany and you're like, okay, something about nature, something about,
It's getting unplugged or whatever. Yeah.
It is similar in the sense of like, I leave my environment and I have new experiences and kind of doing that thing where I observe myself having these cravings, having these seekings when I have new experiences where I have this very heart open moment, whether it's a heart open as I'm looking at this expansive, natural environment, or I'm smelling the smells of nature. But on this trip, coming back to New York from Texas, I had these very heart open experiences because I visited with lots of old friends. So we came to New York, saw you guys, friends and family. We saw so many family members at your house. You hosted, saw all of our family. I saw so many old friends from college. We went to Boston after we left your house. I saw so many. We walked around Brandeis, with my old college friends and just reminisce and had so many of these very heart open, hugely connected experiences with my old, long-time friendships, which I think most of our listeners can relate to. Like, there's really nothing like that. There's oftentimes
comfort level.
Yeah. The friends you make later in life just can't compare to those moments where, like, I just think back to each hug that I had with each one of these people that I was seeing for the first time in years. It's like this expansive feeling. It's not so dissimilar from that expansive feeling that you have sitting and watching a sunset or being in a forest or like that moment in nature. It's a very similar heart open feeling. And then what follows, and I am observing myself having this moment, what follows is, that felt great. How do I get more of it? And usually I come out of that with like, I need to move to the middle of nowhere. I watched myself have this feeling of, how do I get closer to my old friends? Maybe we need to move back to the East Coast. Maybe we need to come back closer to New York. Maybe I need to, spend more. It's this very quick, that felt good. I need more.
More. Yeah.
And it can happen with shopping. It can happen with, I don't know,
go to a good concert.
Yes, exactly.
Have a fun night out. Yeah.
Totally. Which is why people are like, follow a band around the country. Or it can happen with, I sold something on eBay that like I made a lot of money and now I'm going to go through my closet, sell all my stuff on Poshmark, or,
it's like a little high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some are healthier than others. Some, yeah.
But I noticed myself, and Jeff had this too. He was more like, I think he feels very at home in the New York culture. Like he got his high was, I feel so myself in New York.
Right. I feel seen.
I feel like I belong. So we both kind of came home with this like, that felt so good. I didn't go so far as like, we should move back to New York, but it definitely felt like, how do we get more of that? And then I stop and I pause and I'm like, I'm seeking. This is me being like, that felt good. How do I get more? Instead of like, that felt good. It's okay that felt good and now it's gone. I can handle that. Instead of needing to do the thing where I'm like, just giving into that felt good. I need more.
Where I guess is the line though of like, shouldn't you do more things that make you feel good, make you feel seen? Like maybe it's not like we need to move back to New York, but maybe it's like, I need to plan a yearly girls trip with my old friends, or I need to, come back more often. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like where's the line of like Because I think it is okay to be inspired by something or kind of like feel connected and then go with that. Like with your
do
gut,
something
whatever.
about it. Yeah, totally. And I think that's where we fall, which is where we're not very like structured, ritualistic type people, but we have made this ritual of like coming to New York every single summer. I think because of this, we have created that ritual. But I think the other consideration is it felt really great. Each of those hugs that I had with each of those friends that felt so connected and so loving was because it had been years.
It wouldn't be the same. Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same if we were meeting every week for lunch.
Yeah. So maybe like something in between meeting every week for lunch and meeting every 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be like, where the sweet spot in that lies.
Exactly. So this leads me into my next thing that I wanted to talk about, which was Olivia Rodrigo's new album.
Okay. I haven't listened.
So good. I love it.
Oh, wow.
I've already listened to it a couple of times through. I think
you'll have to text me your favorite songs.
Oh, I'm going to text you. The Cure is really good. It's my newest.
I'm not going to remember.
Okay. I'll text it to you.
Okay.
Those of you who haven't listened yet, start with that one. It's really, really good. So our little middle ground, I think, is that we might try to come back to New York because she is skipping Texas. I don't know if that's on purpose.
Burn.
Yeah, she's skipping Texas. So we might try to come back to New York to
When is that?
See her. It's not till February. I think she's coming to Brooklyn.
Okay. What is the name for an Olivia Rodrigo fan? Like the Swiftie of Olivia Rodrigo?
That's a good question. Am I that? I think I am that, whatever it is.
Seems like it. Yeah.
I'm like a 15-year-old girl with my music taste, but
you have like tween girls.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense that you would be
like embedded into my...
Right. You're allowed. Yeah. You have like a connection. Livy's says Will. Okay. Livy's.
I think
you're
I'm
Livy.
Officially a Livy. I mean, it's great.
You have to get some merch. Yeah.
I think my kids would cringe if I wore. It's for them. It's not for me. I can quietly listen in my own time, but I can't be too overt about it.
I love it. I'm excited to see you then.
Yeah. So we might see you in February then.
Okay. Or sooner. We have a group trip maybe coming up. We'll see.
Can we get the girls those big headphones and take them to the concert with those big baby headphones?
I don't think you'd want to be around them at that hour of the night. Once it hits like 5:30, they are like Moody Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like not
all right.
Not
leave them home.
Yeah, I think
we'll take them next year.
So the Knicks won the NBA championships, as you know. And I was wondering what your psychological take was on my reaction to it, which was like, at first I was like, this is so nice. Everyone's so excited. Everyone in New York is in such a good mood. There's like this camaraderie. There's like this, everyone who's like in this city or this area where it kind of like feels like, they get off on like their angstiness or like their like abrasiveness is like softening and being so excited. There was another part of me when they won, and I think it was exciting, like leading up to the games. And then something about the fact that when they actually won, there was a part of me that was like, can we rein it in a little?
Okay.
Like, we're not on the team. Like, why are we so excited? Like curb your enthusiasm kind of thing. Where I was like, I don't know. It's like, it's not so special, or like how excited people were was like turning me off.
Okay.
And I think that's a me thing. I don't think it's about like, I don't think
that
you
are
wrong.
The outlier.
Yeah. There's something wrong with me. And I was wondering what you think there is.
Yeah. Let's unpack, but only because most people love the opportunity to jump on a party boat. Mm-hmm. That's just like floating right by your neighborhood and you can hop right on. Maybe because you didn't actually watch any of the games, or
I watched the last game.
The entire thing, or just a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I was on my phone for most of it until the end, but I didn't watch it.
So you personally, I know you, and like you're a very real person. So maybe you personally feel a little phony going so hard on it because like, you really don't care that much. You only watched a little bit of the last game, partially, mostly on your phone.
I think that's part of it. Yeah. And I think a part of me is like a little jealous that I'm not like dancing in the street. Like I never get that excited about anything.
Yeah.
And I think I think part of it is like, I'm jealous. So that's why I'm like hating. I'm like a little, like, I want to be so irrationally enthused by something. And then I'm like I'm like, I didn't even cry when my daughters were born. Like, I'm like,
why are you crying about this thing that has nothing to do with you?
I didn't cry on my wedding day. And I think I'm kind of like, I wish I was able to like get happier when like, I think happy things happen.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's like a brain body connection thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I was like irritated that everyone was so happy.
Perhaps reminds you of like your own little bit of like constricted affect.
I think so. Yeah. I think, and I feel bad about it. I think it like makes me feel worse about it that I like can't get there over anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to like get there. I don't.
My prescription for you would be like one of these
EMDR therapy.
No, I wasn't going to say EMDR, although that is helpful. I was going to say like going to one of these wild like dance things sober.
Well, that's a good point. Like the only time I think I can get like really loose is when I'm drinking.
Like I went to a yoga retreat once and they had, which you would probably never do. It's completely sober. And they play this like kind of like tribal drumming music. And everyone just like goes in this room, and a big like gymnasium type room. And you just like wildly like move your body, like unbridled, just like moving and emoting. And just like what you would kind of do at a dance club, but like sober and just like not just like emoting. And I think that would be you could start small.
Maybe I'll start a little small. Strangers in a yoga retreat, sober. This sounds.
Okay. So maybe what you could start with, my little prescription for you, is to just like be by yourself in a room, play some music by yourself, sober, and dance.
You know what? Going off of that, I think I'm going to try that around my girls.
Okay.
Because that I think is like also another place where it's like, I want to be silly.
Yeah.
Like for them. Like I think I want to like, cause that's like all kids are like, kids don't have that constrictive, like I look at like them laughing and I'm not like, what are you laughing at? It's not even funny. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like, oh, like they're just like so moved by like the simplest little things. Maybe I'll like try to, it's like, that's a great opportunity to be silly without feeling like you're an idiot.
Cause there's no other adult, like fully conscious human around.
Right. Where you're like dancing for your babies or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Play some silly music and just dance and move your body with no one else around but them. That's my prescription for you. I love it.
That'll be my foray.
Yeah. And just like start to just get comfortable emoting. We've talked, I think this is coming up for you, this idea of like having big emotions. There's a little shame around that. We talked about that a couple of sessions ago.
There we go. We did. Yeah. No, we did.
So, all right. We're tapping into something here.
All right. More on that in the coming weeks. I'll let you know how that goes. But let's get into some advice for the listeners.
Let's do it.
I'll read our first overshare. Before we do that, if you have a voicemail, you can leave us a voicemail at 646-363-6294, or you can email us at oversharing. As always, if you want to subscribe to this podcast, we love our subscriber community. You get 2 bonus episodes a month, and you get all the episodes ad-free and a day early. Or you can join one of Dr. Naomi's therapy groups. How do they do that?
Come find us at naomibernstein.com. We have rolling admission. If you want to find more of that connection that I was describing, if you're feeling lonely or just craving support, we do all these sorts of challenges. Come find us, naomibernstein.com. Also, if you are looking for an individual therapist or a couples therapist, I do have some openings there too. So naomibernstein.com, you can fill out an intake form there and see if we might be a good match for each other. So come find me.
let's do this. I will read our first overshare. Jordana and Dr. Naomi, I could use your advice. My husband and I got married in April this year. We currently live in a condo downtown in a major city and have started the process of looking for a house in the suburbs. We aren't in a huge rush, so I was looking forward to starting the process and having some fun on Zillow, going to open houses, etc. That's always how it starts.
Gateway drug.
Yes. Unfortunately, the process has become a point of contention in our relationship. We live in an area where the housing market is highly competitive and expensive, so I've made peace with the fact that we may not be able to find a house in our budget that checks every single one of our boxes. For example, maybe it's in a good neighborhood and has a renovated kitchen, but no garage. When we tour a house, I'm always pretty positive and can envision changes we could make to make it work for us. My husband, on the other hand, is extremely picky. He's always quick to decide he doesn't like a house. And despite insisting that he knows we may have to compromise on some things, it's starting to feel like he can't actually act on that. He thinks I just like every house we look at. The difference in our attitudes and his general pickiness is causing some resentment going both ways. For me, it brings up the fact that I am the one that has savings and a higher salary, so I will be covering the entire down payment. He could never have bought any of the houses we are looking at on his own. How do we get back to enjoying this process and being newlyweds? Please help. What do you think?
Yeah, it does sound like that sentence in there around how she's financing the down payment is increasing her sense of irritability around his strong opinions.
And I think it probably feels icky to her or both ways. It's like, one, to even have the thought and like feel a little resentful for it. And then also to like feel like he doesn't have a right to say anything because of that, even if she, maybe she doesn't think she believes that, but maybe she does believe that in some sense. And I think that's tough. And I think that's probably very, very relatable to a lot of marriages, said or unsaid.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're saying it, because I think when you don't admit that you're having these negative feelings, then it just kind of seeps out in like this low level irritation. So I'm glad you're aware that finances is part of what's irking you here. I think the other part that's bothering her is he's just like yucking her yum, which is kind of annoying. Like she went into this like, I want to be excited and this is fun and I could see this and I've been on the other side of this where you see something and you're like, oh, wow, wouldn't this be great? And someone's like, well, this, or point out this negative thing or point out that negative thing. And once, fine, twice, fine. When it feels like that's happening every time you look at a house, after a while, it just feels like you're kind of ruining the joy of this, which is, I think, where she's at, which I could see why that's starting to get annoying. And then once you're starting to get annoyed, then on top of it, this feeling of, and you're not even contributing to the down payment, like you should just be happy kind of to be moving into any of these houses.
Right. You should just be happy to be here. Right. Which is not something that feels like right in a marriage. Well, I do think she needs to change the way she thinks about the money situation because, they're married. It's not like they just started dating. I could see if I just started dating someone and I think she needs to remove that from the equation because if you're going to be part of being married is being a team. And I think if the roles were reversed and he was contributing more, I think that you would think it was odd for him to not say that you could have a say in looking for these things. And it's a hard mindset. I think it is that's sort of an underrated thing about marriage that no one really talks about or prepares you for is this idea that especially if you're single into your 30s or your 40s even, or later, this idea that you're automatically supposed to start thinking, as a team, as opposed to as to what you're bringing to the table, as opposed to what you're doing. It is an entire mindset shift, especially when you're married.
Yes.
And so I don't think it comes on day one of being married where you're okay, now it's everything is equal and we're all just working towards the same thing. I think that does take a little bit of time, but I don't think that thought about her money and the housing thing should be a part of the equation.
Yeah. Well, the first step is awareness, right? She's aware that she has this thought. I think she doesn't love that she has it, but denying that it's there isn't going to help. So great. You're aware that you have it. You're sharing it with us. It's playing into it. I think what will help is if you can share the rest of this, which is, I was looking forward to being excited about this process. I think the same thing can happen with a wedding sometimes too, where you're like, I was excited about this wedding process and now it just feels like it's getting stressful because someone's so particular or nitpicky or anxious. What it sounds like is he's having a lot of anxiety about picking the right place, and his anxiety is like ruining the fun for her.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like he has unrealistic expectations about what they're going to find in this market with the amount of money they have. So I think they just need to have an honest conversation about that. Like,
but it sounds like he's saying like big in reality, like he's saying logically what she says in the email. I know we're not going to have everything, but then boots on the ground, when they go to the house, he's focusing on what's not there. And that's the part. Like, I think he'll be like, I know we can't get everything, but he's not able to open his mind to say like, I'm really okay with not getting everything.
Well, maybe he wants to wait until they have a larger budget to get more of what he wants. Maybe he doesn't feel like he can say that because she's so excited about looking for a house. And so instead he's like trying to stop her from getting all the houses that she wants, instead of saying what he really thinks, which is like, I would rather wait until we have a larger budget and can get more of the things on our list than buy a house now and kind of have to sacrifice for this. Like, they need to have like just like a realistic conversation about what's out there, the budget that they're getting, and their expectations given that budget. And like, if they even want to do this, like maybe he doesn't really want to do this.
Yeah. Or maybe she's talking about like her experience of being the only person contributing. Maybe that's I always say real estate is very emotional, which is why it's an interesting investment place to invest your money, right? Because if you can strike in certain areas where people are making emotional decisions, like I think for him, like this might be avoidance. His anxiety, his pointing out the negative might be his way of avoiding doing this until he financially can contribute. So he might be pointing out the negative because, like you're saying, maybe he wants to wait until he can contribute something more financially, and then they can get exactly what they want. So subconsciously, even he might be saying, oh, well, I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like the other thing, because what he really wants to say is, I don't feel comfortable moving forward until I can contribute financially to this. It doesn't make me feel good. He might be just conflicted. He doesn't really want to say that because maybe he does want to move, but he's kind of subconsciously feeling that way, or his subconscious is coming out by just pointing out the negatives because he kind of wishes that he was in a place where he could make up potentially that extra difference that would get them the garage or the brand new kitchen or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think this is worth like ironing out before you do commit to a house, because I think that like, it sounds like there's like many financial things that unsaid in the relationship that it would be good to just like work through. Like, you know, you could say how you feel about contributing, if that's something you really feel like about you contributing more, if there's some sort of resentment underlying that. Like, don't wait until your mortgage payments. I think like talk about like the way that you see your finances going over the rest of your relationship. Talk about like what you feel like is fair, what you feel like, what your expectations are of each other, what your, you know, feelings around money are. I think having it to talk about like what your feelings around finances and spending and money is like such an important thing to process, especially when you're doing it with someone else who might have totally different feelings about money and spending and saving and how expectations about what their partner brings to the table financially.
Yes. And I think this is when you go to see a house, this is a perfect projection board for all of these unspoken insecurities or resentments, depending on who we're asking, to come out onto. You know, I don't like this, or her being like, I love this, or whatever it is. This listing is the perfect place for that to come out. So I do agree. I think she should talk to him. How do you feel about the fact that you're not able to contribute to the down payment right now? Like, are you feeling insecure about that? That's a very vulnerable share. I don't blame him for not just coming out with that if he is having insecurities about that, that's a tough thing to say to somebody that you want to, that you're sleeping with and you want them to find you sexy and, attractive. It's hard to say, I feel really insecure that I can't contribute.
Especially for men.
Yeah, especially for men. So that might be underlying why he's nitpicking and why he's maybe stalling a little bit or doing these behaviors that are irritating you and then making you even more annoyed. I think she would be less resentful if he was kind of like, just like, oh my God, this is so amazing that we/you have the money for this down payment. I'm so thankful. Let's do it. These all look great. Yay. But I don't think he can do that because he's struggling with probably some insecurity around not contributing.
And maybe he feels that you also have some insecurity about him not contributing also, which it sounds like she does. And maybe he can feel that. So I think this would be great to get through. I know that wasn't like your solution of you're right, he's right, but like, give us an update.
Yeah.
Let us know how that goes.
On this. This is a tough one, but you will be closer and stronger as a couple if you can really talk this through in a calm and loving way.
Yes, I agree. All right. Well, let's do a Betch Assist. Do you want to read this one?
Hey, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. I have a 20-month-old son and I'm currently 13 weeks pregnant. We tried for almost a year for this baby and were overjoyed when we finally did conceive. That has led to more anxiety this time around, in addition to knowing 4 people personally who have all lost a baby post 20 weeks pregnant in the last year. That being said, I kept saying I would be happy with a boy or a girl and that it didn't matter. I would be very happy with our first girl, who I'd name after my late grandmother, and giving my in-laws their first granddaughter. I also thought I'd be equally happy with a brother for my son that would be only 2 years apart in age. On top of that, I wouldn't have to buy anything new. I'm also very comfortable with boys and feel confident in the knowledge I've gained so far in raising a son. So yesterday, I got an email that my blood work results were in, which would include gender. Once the possibility of actually knowing came, I started to feel differently. I immediately got my hopes up for a girl, and in just a few hours I waited to be with my husband so we could read the results together, I really started to have a preference and overthink the whole situation. We opened the results and read, consistent with male. My first thought was, aw, and I teared up. I was actually really comforted and happy knowing our next baby would be a boy. My husband, however, was immediately disappointed, made a noise, and sighed. In his ideal world, he'd have 3 girls. I don't know if it was his reaction or the feelings I had leading up to reading the results, but now I'm not as excited as I thought I'd be. I'm worrying more and more that I'll never get to use my grandmother's name or even have a daughter at all. On the other hand, I don't think I was lying to myself and genuinely am excited for my son to have a brother, but my feelings aren't congruent anymore. How do you two feel about gender disappointment? I feel ashamed for being upset when I know so many people struggle with infertility, but I can't get myself to tell friends and family that we're having another boy. I'm also fearful that the news wouldn't be as exciting as saying we're having our first girl. Do either of you have an intention that can improve my mood surrounding sharing the news and give me back that sense of excitement about being a mom of 2 boys? I really want to be excited because the current shame and disappointment I feel doesn't feel great. Thanks in advance, a true boy mom.
I think gender disappointment is like one of those things that a lot of people feel, but it feels really icky.
Yeah.
It feels like kind of gross. So people either usually don't talk about it because it's also like, it kind of feels like it can translate into like not being excited for your child or being upset that, not just being grateful to have a healthy child.
It can feel like this shameful feeling of like, my baby will know that I felt this way and will feel like if I speak this out loud, then my baby will somehow know and feel like I didn't love them or like that they weren't wanted or I didn't love them for who they were or, there's
or enough. Yeah. Or I wasn't like as excited about them or something.
Yeah. And this comes up for patients that like didn't want to be pregnant at all.
Really?
And then, like someone who gets accidentally pregnant and they don't even know if they want to keep the baby. And then they decide to keep the baby. And then they're like, feel guilty that they ever thought of not having the baby, I mean, it's on a different level.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were saying they feel gender disappointment.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm saying like,
there's they even considered not having the baby.
Considered not having the baby. And then they're like, oh my God, how did I ever think that I didn't, like, there's almost this feeling of like, what if they found out that I didn't really want them, or that, then they're going to feel like your love for your baby comes in how you are with your baby when your baby is born, or like that. You don't have to worry that it means you don't love them or that you've rejected them. It's normal to have feelings of, I had a hope or a dream or a fantasy of what this was going to look like, and now it's going to look different.
Yeah. I mean, I just talked about that in the beginning of this episode, like not in terms of the gender, but in terms of like my vision for how they would be. Like, and it wasn't a vision for how their gender would be, but it was a vision for how like taking them on daily walks would be. And they're not living up to that. You know what I mean? Like, does it mean I'm like, I don't love them, or they're not like, no, it's like, there's certain things that you envisioned in your head might go a certain way. And like, yeah, it's kind of, it feels icky to be like, I wish you would just behave.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean I don't love you if you're not doing that. It just means like, I think there's a million different moments in that probably come up with the kids where you expected something and it's not how it turned out.
And gender is an interesting concept around that, where yes, there is some likelihood that you will have certain experiences with certain genders more so than others. But I'm sure there's those moments where you realize, okay, I have a boy and I thought I really like basketball and he has no interest in watching the Knicks game with me. Like, I'm in here watching the Knicks game and he is playing chess in the other room or whatever. And there's like some disappointment there of like, I got my, consistent with male, 6 years ago. And here I am watching the Knicks game by myself. I envisioned that consistent with male meant I'd have my little boy next to me with his Knicks jersey on and going crazy with me in the streets. And he's,
not interested.
Playing Pokemon or whatever he's doing in the other room, not interested. So I agree. This is just one, not to, be a downer, but this is just one of many disappointing moments that you're going to have as your children grow into their own humans that are going to be completely out of your control.
Yeah. And I think almost like if she just like leaned more into it, like let's say that is a sad thing for her, that she's envisioned having this daughter that she could name after her grandmother. And maybe she has these thoughts about like what she was going to do with her and do all these things, whatever it is. Like, I think it's okay to let yourself be sad about that for a little bit. And, not feel like you're a bad person for doing that. I think if the shame around it almost makes it linger more, instead of saying, okay, like, let me take a few hours a day, whatever it is, to like, just feel bad that I didn't get the exact thing I wanted. It's okay.
And this is coming from someone who struggled with infertility, and you're not here being like, how dare you care about the gender? Like, you should just be lucky to have a baby. And I think this happens to a lot of people. And I do think ultimately there will be experiences that you will have with your two boys that you didn't expect to have, that are going to be joyful and fun and adorable. And there, might be experiences that you won't get to have that might feel like a little bit of a loss, where you might see someone having an experience with a girl and you'll be like, I didn't get to have that. It's interesting because I met up with one of my college friends, like I was talking about, when we were in Boston, and she has two boys. And I remember when she got the results of her second, she's a girly, she likes shopping and she likes lots of girly things. And when she found out she was having her second boy, she was a little bit like this, a little not the happiest, I won't go into too much detail, but not the happiest. And so, we were sitting on the couch, me and my two girls, and having, girl chat. I could tell she, now 13 years later, she was having a little pang of that moment of like, she was like, do you guys do this a lot?
Aw.
She was like, do you guys have these, have these talks, and I could tell like it comes in these little moments, but I'm sure she has her moments where she feels like all the, boy mom love.
Yeah.
So it's going to be,
and she could have talks with her sons. There's a certain way maybe there's less of an inclination, but it's still like you said. Yeah.
But we always talk about moments. There's like moments of feelings of loss, and there's moments of feeling of joy, in all the different, combinations of families and how that's going to work. So I agree with you. Let yourself have these feelings. Let your husband have his feelings. I think probably what triggered it was like your husband not hiding it and just showing his disappointment. You maybe were trying to kind of fake it a little bit or like cover it up a little bit. And then when he was letting it out, maybe
then it's in the air.
It's in the air. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is infectious. I do agree with that. It's like, there's these moments. And again, you're kind of like, well, what are we going to do with this feeling? Because we can't change the results. So like, what are we going to, I think it's like an awkward moment probably for them as a couple.
Yeah. And I think what happens sometimes what our minds do when we get an unchangeable, disappointing result is a lot of people very quickly go to, well, but it's okay because of this and it's okay because of that. And this is why it's going to be okay. And I'm going to do it this way. And we're going to do it this. And that doesn't allow you the space to feel your feelings and have that disappointment. And so I think it is important that you let yourself feel disappointed. It's okay. You're still going to love your son. You're still going to have wonderful moments, but it is also, you might in 13 years sit on a couch with your friend with 2 daughters and have another pang of disappointment. And that's okay. Allow yourself to have those little feelings, those little moments.
And sometimes it's hard because like other people project their own shit on you. Like even me, I have 2 girls, and like, sometimes people will make comments like, are you going to like do another and try to have the boy? Like you get that sometimes. And it's like people almost like she said, part of it is I think it's not as exciting to say we're having a girl. Like I think people like, there's like this societal vision of like, this nuclear family with the boy and the girl, and like now you're set and like doesn't, you know what I mean? Like
totally
you've got it all.
I remember we did a gender reveal on our boy. I don't really remember doing a gender reveal when we had our second girl, because like who cares, kind of.
Oh, you already knew the gender.
We knew the gender, but we did like a gender reveal for everybody else.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
But it's like, yeah, I mean, big deal. You're having another girl. But when we had the boy, like it was like for other people to be like, oh, yay, something different.
Right. I think that's something different. And I mean, I'll like normalize that too. I had the twisters are 3 weeks apart. So I got one result and then I got the other result 3 weeks later. And I think there was a part of me that would be like, it would have been nice to have one of each. There's like a feeling, like I think there's like I didn't feel like debilitatingly upset about it, or like even there's like a fleeting thought of like, this would have been nice. But again, like I think what I did, maybe it's different than this person, is like, that would have been nice, but this is going to be nice too. And I think it's okay to say like, that would have been nice. And doesn't make you not love the other baby.
Gender reveals are funny, right? Especially, that's why I think when we did it, we found out first and then we kind of did the reveal for everybody else, because it's a little personal, to be like getting the news publicly, because people do have a feeling about it that you might not want to process in front of a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it's like, finding out what college you're going to, or like any of the, like sometimes you want a second to like take in the results on your own.
Right.
That's why I think a gender reveal it's kind of loaded. If you
personal experience that happened. Like I've seen a few where I'm like, oh, get the popcorn. This is kind of entertaining because this person is having this very personal moment that probably shouldn't be public.
I think if you're the kind of person who feels really strongly about the gender, a gender reveal, a public or like a large gender reveal is probably not the way you should go. I think you should only do those if you really don't care at all either way.
Yeah. I've seen a few where like someone's unhappy and it's like not, as I'm saying, no shame, but like it's hard.
Word to the wise.
Yeah.
Okay.